Tonight, if you wake up at 2 in the morning and can't fall back asleep, you probably think something is wrong with you. You reach for your phone, you sigh, you tell yourself you're broken somehow, that tomorrow you'll be exhausted because of it. But what if that moment is exactly how your ancestors slept for thousands of years? Not a disorder, not insomnia, a rhythm your body used to know long before the world had electric light. The truth here is stranger than you'd expect. This isn't a fringe theory floating around wellness blogs either. It comes from actual archives, actual laboratories, actual peer-reviewed data. And once you see it, you can't unsee it in your own life. Today, you're taught that good sleep means one long, unbroken block. 7 to 8 hours, straight through, no interruptions. Wake up in the middle of the night and it feels like failure. But that belief is only about 200 years old. It is not some ancient law written into your biology. For most of human history, before clocks ruled anything, people didn't measure the night in hours. They measured it in sleeps. You'd hear someone say, shortly after first sleep, the same casual way you'd say after lunch. It wasn't a medical term, it was just Tuesday. Go back before the industrial age, and a historian named A. Roger Eckhart spent 16 years digging through old documents, diaries, court records, plays. He kept finding the same two phrases over and over: first sleep and second sleep. People back then didn't sleep in one long stretch. They went to bed shortly after sunset, slept for 3 or 4 hours. Then they woke up, not from noise, not from a bad dream. They simply woke naturally in the middle of the dark. That stretch of wakefulness had a name: the watch. It lasted an hour, sometimes 2. Some people prayed. Some talked quietly with a spouse lying beside them. Some got up to visit a neighbor. Some just lay there, turning over the dream they'd just had. Some cultures even had a word for the dreams people carried into that gap, treating them as small prophetic messages worth remembering before drifting into the second sleep. Midwives timed certain rituals around it. Farmers checked on animals. It wasn't an empty hour. It was woven into ordinary life the same way a coffee break is woven into yours. Then, when the body was ready, they slept again. A second sleep, carrying them through to morning. Eckhart didn't find this in just one obscure diary either. He traced it across 400 years of records in England, France, Italy, even colonial America. Doctors wrote about it. Poets wrote about it. It was so ordinary nobody thought to explain it, the way nobody today bothers explaining what breakfast is. One physician from the 1500s even recommended the watch as the best time for quiet study. The mind, freshly rested from the first sleep, felt unusually clear. Scholars chose that exact hour to read. It's not just something buried in old paper either. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer communities, groups like the Hadza in Tanzania, who still live largely without electric light, found something similar. Sleep scientist Jerome Siegel tracked their nights for weeks. Their sleep wasn't perfectly split like the old European pattern, but it was far looser, far more broken than anything considered normal in a modern city. Waking briefly in the night wasn't rare for them. It was routine. Some researchers even found that despite all that broken sleep, the Hadza rarely complain of insomnia at all. Whatever word exists in their language for chronic sleeplessness, if one exists, it isn't reaching for it the way industrialized cultures do. Maybe the problem was never the waking itself. Maybe it was only ever the fear wrapped around it. Sounds like just a historical curiosity, right? But someone tested this in a lab. Ver wasn't trying to prove anything about ancient history when he started. He was studying seasonal mood changes, curious what happens to the human body when nights get long, the way they do naturally in winter. What he found instead was something closer to a fossil, a sleep pattern preserved almost perfectly, waiting under generations of electric light, ready to resurface the moment the light disappeared again. A psychiatrist named Thomas Ver ran an experiment at the National Institute of Mental Health. He kept volunteers in total darkness for 14 hours a day for weeks at a time, mimicking a long winter night before artificial light existed. No clocks, no lamps, nothing to mark the hours. And slowly, without anyone teaching them to, their bodies drifted back into that same two-part pattern. They slept, woke calmly in the middle of the night, then slept again. Almost exactly what those old diaries had described centuries earlier. Ware measured something else too. During that quiet middle window, his volunteers showed elevated levels of prolactin, a hormone linked to calm, almost meditative states. the same chemical nursing mothers produce while feeding a baby at night. Their bodies weren't malfunctioning in the dark. They were settling into something strangely peaceful. This is where everything flips. Waking at night might not be a malfunction in your body at all. It might be the original setting your brain was built with. What actually changed wasn't us. It was the world around us. The first working light bulb rewired human life in a matter of decades. Nights that used to be pitch dark became bright enough to work through. Some physicians at the time even complained publicly about it. Gaslighting, they said, was making people restless, pushing bedtimes later without giving the body time to catch up. Almost nobody listened. Progress rarely does. It wasn't only light bulbs either. Coffee became cheap and widespread around the same era, giving tired bodies an artificial boost to push through a compressed schedule. Clocks moved from church towers into homes, onto walls, onto wrists, turning sleep into something to be managed and optimized rather than something the body simply knew how to do on its own. Factories started running through the night. People began sleeping later, waking earlier, and squeezing rest into one tight, uninterrupted block. The two-part sleep that once felt completely ordinary quietly disappeared from human memory in less than 100 years. Some researchers point out that insomnia rates climbed sharply in the 20th century, right alongside the spread of electric light and shift work, and wonder how much of that timing is coincidence. It's hard to prove a single cause for something so complicated, but the pattern is at least worth noticing. A species that slept in two pieces for most of its history, forced almost overnight into one unbroken block, and now quietly struggling with exactly that block. So now, when your body tries to do what your ancestors always did, you assume you're sick. That old instinct is still sitting somewhere inside you, even though the world outside changed completely. And here's the part that should really stop you. This shift happened so fast, historically speaking, that almost no one noticed it happening at all. Grandparents who grew up with two-part nights raised grandchildren who never split a night in their life. Within 2 generations, the entire concept vanished. Not because it stopped working, because the dark stopped being dark. Some cultures never fully lost this rhythm either. Afternoon rest periods, siestas, reposo, the quiet hour after lunch in parts of the Mediterranean and Latin America aren't laziness. They may be a faint cultural memory of a body that was never meant to draw all its rest from one single block after dark. So what does any of this actually mean for your life right now? Think about it. Every time you wake at night and spiral into worry about losing sleep, that worry itself is probably what keeps you awake longer. Picture it for a second. You're lying there at 2 in the morning, wide awake, and instead of panic, you just accept it. No phone, no glowing screen flooding your eyes with light that tricks your brain into thinking it's noon. Just you and the dark, and a little quiet time that belongs to no one but you. That's not wasted time. Think of it less like a malfunction and more like a scheduled maintenance window your body quietly claims for itself, whether you approve of the timing or not. Fighting it is like arguing with the tide. Working with it, even just a little, might be the closest thing to peace you get at 2 in the morning. For most of human history, that was simply Tuesday night. Some sleep researchers now wonder if the pressure to sleep in one perfect, unbroken block is quietly making modern insomnia worse. The harder you fight your body for something it was never built to do every single night, the more anxious and the more sleepless you become. Some sleep clinics have actually started explaining this history to patients with chronic middle-of-the-night waking, not to fix them, just to remove the fear attached to it. In several cases, simply knowing the pattern was normal was enough to break the anxiety loop that kept people staring at the ceiling. Think about how much of your relationship with sleep is built on fear instead of fact. Fear of being tired tomorrow, fear of falling behind, fear of being the only one lying awake while the rest of the world sleeps soundly, even though somewhere right now, across every time zone, thousands of other people are staring at their own ceilings too, each one convinced they're the only one.
Fear that your body is somehow defective when really it might just be older than the world it's living in.
There's something almost funny about it if you step back far enough. You spend money on apps that track your sleep to the minute. You buy blackout curtains, white noise machines, supplements that promise one uninterrupted block of rest. All of it built on a definition of normal that's barely older than your great-great-grandparents. Meanwhile, the thing you're actually panicking about, waking briefly in the dark, calm and clear-headed, is the part of the pattern that survived the longest. Thousands of years versus 200, it's not even close. You don't owe your body an apology for waking up. You don't owe it a perfect, seamless night just to prove you're managing your life correctly. Sleep was never supposed to be a performance you either pass or fail. For almost all of human history, it was simply something the body did in its own time, in its own rhythm, without anyone standing over it with a stopwatch. Maybe the real problem was never your sleep. Maybe it was the number stuck in your head, 8 hours, unbroken, non-negotiable, that no one ever actually proved was the only right way to rest. This doesn't mean you need to start splitting your nights like people did centuries ago. Modern life runs on schedules, alarms, deadlines that don't care about your circadian rhythm. None of that is going away. Nobody's suggesting you block off a 2-hour candlelit study session at midnight before finishing a second sleep until dawn. That world is gone, and mostly, that's fine. But it might mean something smaller. Next time you wake at 2 in the morning, calm, not tired, not irritated, you don't have to panic. That might not be something broken. It might be a quiet echo from a body that remembers an older rhythm better than you ever gave it credit for. Tonight, if you wake up at 2 in the morning and can't fall back asleep, try not reaching for your phone first. Just lie there in the dark and listen to the quiet, the way your ancestors did for thousands of years. Maybe your body isn't broken, maybe it just remembers.